HTB family, how's it going? Welcome to Hold the Ball. Hope you guys are well. It is a very how do I say this? Special edition actually. It's you don't really get this happen very too often, particularly in the NRL, particularly with the state here when we talk about. I'm actually joined here by Aiden Lard here, who is an avid rugby league fan. And again, please correct me, Adam, if I Aiden. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name there. But in saying that as well, please, Aiden, introduce yourself. Give me your thoughts. Introduce yourself, and then I suppose we'll carry the dialogue. So, how have you been going? What's been happening? And again, thank you for joining the Hold the Ball channel.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for having me. Now, all good with my last name. It's actually pronounced Laird, but that's all good. Hey everyone, I'm Aiden. So I'm originally from Adelaide, South Australia. I live here in Melbourne now. And in regards to rugby league, I've been passionate for the NRL for a while. I follow the Melbourne Storm just by default because I now live in Melbourne. And so Melbourne Storm got me into rugby league and everything, and that's how I got, into the game. I started going to games. I started watching the game more because I come from AFL background, right? And so usually, rugby league's not that big in South Australia. So moving to Victoria and getting into rugby league really did broaden my experience, and I'm really passionate about the game now. But then when I started researching the game a bit more, I realized that Adelaide used to have a team. Started off during the Super League War, and then we had a team in the 1998, the inaugural NRL season. I was just like, you know what? Why don't we have a team in the NRL right now? We really should have a team, because I think having a team in South Australia, state of nearly 2 million people, would be the perfect market for an expansion team, and you get all the support and everything. So in recent, last year, me and a few friends of mine and some other passionate rugby league supporters all over Australia, but who have some sort of relationship with Adelaide, we came together and we formed what's called the Jumbuck Army. And that's basically a group that is dedicated to getting an Adelaide team into the NRL, whether that be a rebirth of the Adelaide Rams, or a relocated team, for example, North Sydney Bears, but we'll get into that later, and or a completely new franchise. Whether that happens, as long as there's an Adelaide or South Australian sort of element in the NRL, that's what we support, and that's what we want to bid for. And so we've been working on that for the past few months. Yeah.
Awesome. Look, thanks for the intro, and again, thank you for a bit of a deeper understanding into how you came, to be in this game. As you guys know, Aiden is from South Australia, and Hold the Ball as well is based in South Australia as well. I used to live in Adelaide, now residing in rural South Australia, which is Port Augusta. So I still do my bit here for the rugby league in a way. But in saying that, look, nonetheless, it's So this morning, I suppose, and I'm sure you're the same too, Aiden. We absolutely got bombarded with this news here, surprisingly, of talks of apparently a potential NRL team. Obviously there was a mention of other teams as well, but focus here is Adelaide. There was a mention of teams, and surprisingly, Adelaide was thrown in there. And it looked very positive when you read the articles, when you sort of read exchanges, with PVL, Peter V'landys. What is your take on this, and how do you feel about this? Because this is just massive news, particularly for us South Australians.
When I saw that news article this morning, I woke up this morning and I was thinking, like, you know what? Everyone has doubted us. Everyone has doubted South Australia and its relationship with rugby league football. And then now the NRL is actually seriously considering us for an NRL bid. I just think that's absolutely fantastic. And it just goes to show that the NRL is now thinking more forwardly in terms of how to expand the game. Because there was lots of mention in that article. I mean, I don't completely agree with this about the NRL wanting to become Australia's number one football code, for example. I think there was a lot of bias in that sort of statement and how they want to expand in that way and try and overtake AFL. Look, I don't think the NRL should be trying to do that. That shouldn't be objective. Their objective should just be to spread the game of rugby league across the entire country. And I think if you bring it back to that sort of level, expanding into places like WA, SA, this is the sort of way to go about it, because you've got two big states of Australia that aren't represented in the National Rugby League. How can you really call yourselves the National Rugby League if you don't have WA or SA in it? Going back to that, even the rugby union, the Super Rugby, they have a Western Australian team. They've moved into the right direction of having that sort of representation in what is considered to be an Aussie rules sort of state. And so I think the NRL seriously considering Adelaide for a bid. It's a step in the right direction. So I was super ecstatic reading that this morning.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Just to sort of go on what you're saying as well regarding WA and how they have a rugby team in a so-called, footy state, AFL state, and I'm familiar with AFL as well. I'm sure you follow it. I follow it as well. It is what it is. Having saying that, there's one thing that I think South Australia has over, the likes of WA in particular, is the fact that there's no professional rugby union team in South Australia. There's no team that's represented in the what do you call it? In Super Rugby, so to speak. So South Australia really has that element where they can actually have a rugby league team that's going to be liked by Port and Crows fans, if you want to get technical, and then some, right? Try to bring them together. But what are your thoughts on that? And is that really an advantage, or do you reckon, nah, not really? The fact that South Australia doesn't have a union team, so they can hopefully capitalize just primarily on a rugby league team.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because I've spoken in a lot of dialogue with members of the rugby league community in Adelaide, and also those people in the rugby league community. They have a lot of insight on rugby union as well. And from my understanding, in terms of participation rates for rugby league in Australia, South Australia, that is probably one of the big issues as to why there hasn't been an Adelaide NRL bid that's been seriously made in the last 10 years, because the participation rates are extremely low. Even Victoria, they're successful with the Melbourne Storm, but Victoria relies heavily on support from Queensland and New South Wales for their development. And they've only recently started to get their resurgence of rugby league development, grassroots development in the state. And so with the rugby league, like NRL SA, they've only got at the moment 4 teams or 5 teams playing in their premiership league in South Australia. Compare that with rugby union, however. Rugby union, surprisingly, and I was actually really surprised when I heard this myself from my source, they told me that rugby union actually has higher participation rate in South Australia than rugby league. And I was cross-referencing the data. WA has the same thing as well. WA has more rugby union grassroots players than rugby league, which makes sense, because that's why they have a Super Rugby team versus an NRL team. So I find it surprising that the rugby league states in regards to the Australian rules states, WA and SA, they have more rugby union than they do rugby league. So I think in order to really make this sort of bid work and make this sort of thing be as successful as it can be, the NRL, reading the article, they're talking about, potential $400 million support for this sort of expansion, putting $20 million towards the new franchise and everything. If they can pull that money not just into the, the corporate side of things, but also develop the grassroots of the game in Adelaide and in Perth, if they expand there as well, then, it's only success from there.
No, yeah, I agree with you. Regarding that, yeah, it is surprising, but I still think you've got to start somewhere. You've got to build a platform somewhere, and regardless, look, I won't lie to you guys. I don't like rugby union at all. I'm not really so I don't. It is what it is. Call me one-eyed piggy. It is what it is. But in terms of, I suppose that NRL trying to establish South Australia as some sort of rugby league state, if you will, to a degree. I think they've got to start there. And you're right. So long as they do build into the grassroots as well. And again, granted, I also want to bring in SANRL as well. I think they do a fantastic job. I think they do a good job trying to promote the game and do what they can. But yeah, you're right. There needs to be a bit more enforcement of financial backing. And I think you mentioned the 400 million. 20 million in South Australia, the context of rugby league could go a long way, in my opinion. And
that would be incredible. And just going back to your question, to expand on, you mentioned before Adelaide Crows and Port fans, right, in regards to the support. The way that I think Melbourne Storm really succeeded in approaching its trying to reach its fan base, because they were targeting the AFL heartland, the state of origin of Australian rules football, right? So the way that they presented themselves, which I think the Adelaide Rams could do if they come back, is to not approach itself as trying to poach Aussie rules fans or trying to poach fans of other codes, but to be the team of that city in this competition. That's what the Melbourne Storm did. So the Melbourne Storm, they never tried to come into Victoria and say like, hey, we're going to change Victoria. We're going to, we're going to take all the Aussie rules fans and make them NRL fans only and stuff like that. No, the Melbourne Storm is the representation of Victoria in the NRL, and therefore, if you're from Melbourne and stuff like that, you would support the Melbourne Storm. That's what the Adelaide Rams can do. The Adelaide and any other sort of expansion team. That's how they should present themselves. And I think if you look at the example, bit not too far fetched, but if you look at the example of the A League team, right, Adelaide United, the soccer, right, they're really good at that sort of thing. They don't do anything to try and make a split between the Port and Crows fans. They're very much for everyone in Adelaide, and I've got plenty of Adelaide United fans who support either Adelaide Crows or any other sort of team, Port Adelaide. Like they're focused on this code and trying to target this market of people, and they're not trying to target anywhere else. They're not trying to bring elements of it from anywhere else. And that's what I think Melbourne Storm has succeeded at. They do have some they have like the paper banner and stuff like that, but that's just because it's Melbourne, right? But they don't, have anything specific with any other AFL team. They're not trying to poach fans from any other sort of side. It's just we're the team for Melbourne. We're the team for Melbourne, the NRL. You should support us if you're from Melbourne. The Adelaide Rams can do the exact same thing, bring everyone together. Yeah.
No, I like that. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Nicely said there, Aiden. And I think that's the approach they should have. That's right. It's not about trying to pull fans, obviously trying to attract fans, but at the same time, gelling in, right? We are Adelaide's team. We're Adelaide's team. We're not, whatever,
that's
for
right,
this group. But I think they should also as well sort of learn from, the different SA teams as well, right? Trying to pull in from them as well. And you're right, keep it SA based as well. I think that's the way they can definitely flourish. On top of that as well, again, hypothetical, if things sort of go that way and I suppose move in that way, what happens? I'm talking about from scratch. Obviously, there's going to be a group of people coming to Adelaide, building a base here, players. What are your thoughts on this? Because again, if it does happen, it's a big thing. It's not small. Give me your viewpoints if you can explain that all. If not, that's fine. But what are your thoughts? How do we start from scratch if the NRL give us the AOK?
Sure. So if you look back at the history of rugby league in South Australia, right? Rugby league has been played in South Australia for over 100 years. It's got a strong history in the state. Rugby league's got a history in every single part of Australia. It hasn't always just been New South Wales and Queensland. Rugby league has always had a strong presence everywhere in the country, right? Rugby league was actually here before Australian rules football. And South Australia, the only reason why South Australia, this is like, believe it or not, the only reason why South Australia is not a rugby league state is because one of the premiers, his name was Charles Cameron Kingston. He's one of the previous premiers of South Australia. He deliberately mandated that Victorian style football should be the style of football that is played all across the state in South Australia. And this was like back in the 20th century, right? So it's because of a mandated sort of governmental intervention that Aussie rules became the sort of traditional code of football in South Australia. But rugby league has always had a strong presence in South Australia before the Super League sort of war. Now, I spoke in great detail with the president of South Adelaide Rugby League Football Club about this a couple of months ago, regarding sort of the history of rugby league in South Australia and sort of like the love-hate relationship that people in the rugby league community have with the Adelaide Rams. So my understanding of the whole situation is that before the Super League, um, South Australia actually had a really strong domestic rugby league competition. There was high participation rates. People really enjoyed it. A lot of history. A lot of the foundation clubs of that still play in the NRL SA today. But what happened is that when the Super League happened, the big billionaire investor Murdoch, I think, he came in and he just created the Adelaide Rams out of nothing, right? Just put all the money into it, created Adelaide Rams out of nothing. But instead of getting the local sort of development players to play for Adelaide, they basically put all the players that didn't make the cut for Melbourne Storm or any of the new expansion teams into Adelaide. And basically, it was extremely mismanaged from the start. I mean, it was popular. Adelaide was excited to have their first NRL team, but it was extremely mismanaged from the start, and lack of on-field performance, and then dwindling crowds eventually, and of course, poor Adelaide joining the AFL in 1997 is what led to its downfall, and that's why the other LA Rams were sent to the chopping block when the NRL sort of restructured itself after 1998. But a lot of people in the rugby league community in South Australia, they have a love-hate relationship with the Adelaide Rams because, yes, it was the first NRL team that we had. It was the first time SA had a representation in the National Rugby League. But it was also the sort of thing that killed the domestic rugby league in South Australia, if you think about it. Which kind of hurts because I'm all for the Adelaide Rams to come back. I got some OG Adelaide Rams merch. I'm gonna wear it to State of Origin. I love that. I love that stuff, right? I love being a diehard Adelaide Rams nuffy. But in a way, the Super League war and the sort of making it from scratch, making it from nothing without developing the grassroots or even including the grassroots players, that sort of killed the game in South Australia. But now, it's taken us 20 years. We're slowly redeveloping it. We're slowly getting back in, and we got it. We're not at that level where we want to be yet. We've got about 3 or 4 NRL development officers in South Australia at the moment, and we could use more, obviously. But yeah, that's sort of how I feel. I mean, if we were to start from scratch, yes, it would take a lot of money, but I think we really need to have that sort of connection with the community, connection with the grassroots, and more development officers in Adelaide to get that sort of franchise up and rolling. We also probably would need to do some upgrades to Hindmarsh Stadium if we do use Hindmarsh Stadium as a home ground. I mean, there was talks, the previous SA government, before the current one, they were actually putting the plan to build a new A-League stadium near the river in the city, so much closer to the city, near Adelaide Oval. There was a big multi-million-dollar project, but the current government has sort of scrapped that for economic reasons or whatever. But if that plan was to happen, that the dimensions of that stadium would have been appropriate for NRL, and that would have made us a prime expansion area for NRL expansion.
I see. Yeah, look, first and foremost, thanks again for the deep dive, or just a little bit of a brief summary there of the history of rugby league in South Australia. Look, probably 2 or 3 more questions before we wind this up, just to get us back on what's happening right now.
Absolutely.
I reckon for me, and tell me if I'm wrong, but if Adelaide was to be the next team, I think, in my opinion anyway, I think they shouldn't be known as the Adelaide Rams. I think something different. Do you think that's right? Do you think that's wrong? Where do you stand on that?
I think that South Australians, they love bird mascots. If you think about it, like Adelaide 36 has got the bird mascot, Thunderbirds, Adelaide Crows, stuff like that. Some examples that I've thought of in the past, we could do like Adelaide Ravens. That would keep the AR sort of thing, like Adelaide Ravens, or some sort of cool thing. I personally won't mind if it's the Adelaide Rams. I think if it is the Adelaide Rams, it definitely needs a logo update. Definitely needs to change sort of like the colors as well to incorporate more, I guess, SA pride. Not because I've asked the community and stuff like that, and they have a sort of attachment to the mascot of Ram. The Ram itself, the Ram mascot, it's got like a strong sort of attachment to people that want the Adelaide NRL team back in, and I wouldn't be too opposed if they were to change that, because if it's a fresh start, if it's a fresh sort of franchise and everything, then they should start with their history of fresh. They shouldn't but at the same time, I'm sort of torn because the Adelaide Rams, that's our history, that's our starting point in the NRL. So maybe we should respect that and continue that. It's very torn, but if I couldn't be the Adelaide Rams, I'd choose a mascot like the Ravens, or I don't know, something cool, something that's strong. Like what like dingo or wombat. Something, or even like shrike, for example, the Adelaide Shrikes, like the piping strike on the flag. Something that's some mascot that's uniquely Australian or South Australian. I think would it be attractive to anyone. I mean, there was once a time on Reddit. I think I saw some guy was promoting the Adelaide Pandas because we got the two pandas in the Adelaide Zoo. I think that would be popular with kids. I'm not so sure how adult fans would approach that, but if they could make it good, I would support it. Like I'd support the team because it's Adelaide, not necessarily because of the mascot, but yeah, the mascot is important. And so I think most people would prefer the Rams back, but other people, we're still open to other suggestions. Like even if we take a relocated club, like if a relocated club from Sydney wants to come down here and do like a Sydney Swans sort of thing and become the dominant SA team, have the whole market, we'd take their mascot on as long as they change the name to Adelaide. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea, but I'm also probably more inclined to say that I prefer the fresh start, or considering
Yeah.
on the. Now, last question as well, and before we wrap this up,
Sure.
how are you going to do your bit to support this bid? Or for example, if a team's run up here, what are you going to do? What's your little? How are you going to do your thing to contribute? And then I'll finish up with mine as well.
First thing I'll do is become a foundation member. I'll get the foundation membership. I'll get the premium membership. I'll do everything I can to support the team. I'll go to every single away game here in Melbourne. I'll go to a couple of home games every single year in Adelaide. Or even if I move back to Adelaide permanently, I'll go to every single game. I'll do whatever I can to support an NRL team from Adelaide, happening. And the Jumbuck Army, we've done that. We've sent emails and we've spoken with the government already. I spoke personally with the Senator Tanzania. He's like the opposition leader for sport in South Australia. I spoke with Senator Hilary. She's the SA Sports Minister. They sent me back heaps of correspondence regarding what their plans are. They're looking into it. We've even sent emails to other clubs in Queensland, like Brisbane Firehawks. We said, Brisbane Tigers they're called, but they wanted to have a Firehawks franchise in the NRL. We said, why don't you set up the Firehawks franchise in Adelaide? We're open. We're keen to have you. Stuff like that. We've got correspondence from different clubs. We even spoke to North Sydney as well, and they also responded to us. So that's sort of like the bit that I've done in regards to that we've done, the Jumbuck Army, in regards to promoting this sort of passion we have to get Adelaide back into the NRL. Yeah. So I think I just continue doing that. I just continue supporting it. And, if we actually get an actual coherent bid happening and it happens, mate, I'll be all into it. You'll see me decked out in Adelaide NRL gear, man. I'll be the number one fan.
Awesome, I don't doubt that at all, Aiden. And for those of you who don't know, Hold the Ball myself, I've actually been in conversations with Aiden as well. So it's not the first time we've met. We know each other. We both know, we have some connection to South Australia one way or another. Look, just quickly, what I'll do for me, obviously, it's my channel. I'll always say I'm South Australian based. It is what it is. Happy to promote, happy to go to games. And I think similar to Aiden as well, happy to do my bit. And Aiden, as you know as well, happy to collab and keep collabing, and hopefully we can, both of us, and we can have something to do with this team if it does progress. Would absolutely love to. I'd love to be a foundation member as well. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, look at the background. Much like Aiden supports a team. I support a team, an NRL team. But when the Rams get in, we're both definitely going to be, in favor of supporting this team as well. It is what it is. In saying that, though, any last words before we close this off, Aiden?
Any last words? I think NRL, give Adelaide a chance. We're a city of 1.3 million. We're a state of 2 million. We've got a massive market here. I think if you have one NRL team in South Australia, South Australians, they love their teams. They always support their teams. It's instant fan bases. It's instant membership. It's instant crowds. It's an easy sort of solution. South Australia. Let's do it.
Agreed. Yeah, agree with you. And I suppose in saying that as well, bring back rugby league to Australia, right? If
Absolutely.
AFL can have 2 teams in Queensland and New South Wales, surely the NRL can have
Sure.
1 team in South Australia. And in saying that as
Absolutely.
well,
Yeah.
1 team in WA as well. Let us not forget WA as well in this process as well. And saying that, thank you again, Aiden, for being on here. It was a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll collab again. And looking forward to this news hopefully progressing in the way we want it to. But in saying that, guys, take it easy. See you guys next time. We're just remember SA, NRL, beautiful Adelaide Rugby League. Looking forward to it. Take it easy. See you guys next time.
Bring them back. Thank you. See ya.